Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles, and today's video it's a kind of a peculiar one. I guess in many ways it kind of showcases the value of doing nothing when you don't need to do anything, the stupidity of doing something when you don't need to do anything, and the value of just being patient and waiting to take advantage of the inevitable overeager mistakes that your opponents are always going to make. This is Omphalos, by the way, in the Soviet Tier 10 cruiser, the Petropavlovsk. Well, I say the Soviet Tier 10 cruiser. There are more Soviet Tier 10 cruisers than there are Tier 10 cruisers from Italy, France and Germany combined. We've got the Moskva, we've got the Alexander Nevsky, we've got the Smolensk, we've got the Stalingrad, and we've got this thing, which is the Tech Tree Heavy Cruiser. Armed with 220mm guns, this was the ship that replaced the Moskva when the Moskva became a premium. So what do you need to know about the Petropavlovsk? Well, let's start with the guns, because the guns are fantastic. She has 9 of them, 220mm, 3 guns per turret in 3 turrets, 2 forward, 1 aft. The guns have insanely high shell velocity, 995 meters per second on the armor-piercing shells. And the shells maintain that velocity over distance, and therefore they maintain their very high penetration. She also has improved penetration angles on her armor-piercing shells, but nowhere near as good as the Stalingrad or the Des Moines. Just 5% better than other cruisers, but still, better is better. Also, those turrets all rotate 360 degrees, even the one at the rear, which makes it very easy to bring all 9 guns to bear on a target when you're switching from a target on the port to a target on the starboard bow. That rear turret doesn't have to traverse 360 degrees in order to get there. The ship also has radar, and it's your fairly typical Soviet-style radar, which has short duration but very long range. In fact, the range is enough that with the correct captain skills and equipment setup, you can stealth radar in the Petropavlovsk, with the range of the radar exceeding the range at which you'll be spotted on the surface. What this means in practice, aside from the obvious, is that anytime you're sailing around in the Petropavlovsk and you get detected and you can't see what it is that's detected you, fire up the radar, and whoever's spotting you is guaranteed to be inside your radar range. When it comes to downsides, this ship doesn't have many of them. The high explosive shells aren't particularly good, but well, the armor-piercing shells are very good, so that seems fair. The ship also has what's called a modified dispersion curve, which means basically that she gets less accurate the further away the target that she's shooting at. As you can see there, the ship's handling isn't particularly good, and she has a massive turning circle of nearly 1 kilometre. Other than that though, you really have to start reaching in order to try to find bad things to say about this ship. Her citadel extends above the waterline. Well, that's not exactly unusual for cruisers though, is it? Her 25mm bows aren't fully protected by her icebreaker, so she can be citadeled from the front by just about every battleship that she's ever going to face. Oh no, she's not immune to battleships from the front. Cry me a river. In fact, when you start looking at the list of cons associated as opposed to the pros with the Petropavlovsk, you find a whole bunch of things that are basically common to nearly every other cruiser at this kind of tier. The fact that these common cruiser features are actually being used to populate a list of things that aren't great about the Petropavlovsk gives you some idea of just how, well, good this ship is. Anyway, back to the battle. I'm wondering just how long it's going to take Omphalos to notice that the cap circle right next to him on the other side of that island is being flipped. Oh, there we go. He's using his hydro. Not the radar just yet, but then again he is tucked right up next to that island. So there was a decent chance that whoever was in there would have been detected by the hydro, except he hasn't. But that does at least tell him that there isn't an enemy destroyer within 5 kilometres. And maybe he can get the drop on the enemy destroyer in there, because if he's not detected, he's not going to be expecting trouble, and that is when the enemy Summers does pop up on hydro. Friendly Shimakaze looks like he was thinking of heading in there and challenging, and then realised that he'd be fighting an American destroyer in a Japanese torpedo boat, and very wisely thought better of it. So, the Summers, Tier 10, American destroyer. Now, it's no Shimakaze, but it does have the largest salvo of torpedoes amongst all American destroyers, and there they go. Although possibly not all of them. No, that is all of them. He's got 3 quadruple launchers. And of course with Hydro running, they came as no surprise to anyone. Now at the moment, Omphalos has not been spotted. And because that Summers is sitting there undetected in his smoke screen, Omphalos isn't going to be spotted when he comes around the corner either, at least not until he fires. Some might say that the Summers left it far too late. And they would be right. Somebody needs to say it. Torpedoes on cooldown, detected by Hydro, sitting stationary inside a now completely useless smokescreen, just waiting for whoever hydroed you to come around the corner and do this. Not the smartest decision the Summers has ever made. The second he got hydroed, he should have been getting out of there. Or at the very least gotten closer to that central island in the cap here, so he would have had something to hide behind while he waited out his torpedo reload. But he didn't, so he's dead. Now, of course, Omphalos is capping, but he's been radared, so they know exactly where he is, but it doesn't make the slightest bit of difference because, well, the outer ring of the island is in the way, so he can't shoot at anybody from here. But far more importantly, nobody can shoot at him while he's in here either, because he's outnumbered 4-1, and of the 4 enemy ships that are within 7 kilometers of his immediate position, 2 of them are battleships armed with 18-inch guns, 2 are tier 10 cruisers, one of which is a Stalingrad. So actually getting into a fight with them right now would be absolutely suicidal. And this is where Omphalos is going to demonstrate the importance of not doing anything when you don't need to. Meanwhile, the Thunderer up here has been begging for support. A simple look at the map would show him that Omphalos isn't going to commit suicide on his behalf. The other 2 cruisers with him are both kiting away from this enemy force. And what that Thunderer really needs to do, instead of begging for people to come and suicide with him, is to stop shooting, go undetected, turn around and get out of there. Something that he could easily have done, and if he had, he would have survived this, but he doesn't stop shooting, and so he doesn't survive this. A perfect example of somebody continuing to do something when doing nothing was absolutely the best thing to do for all concerned. In contrast, of course, to the Summers from a couple of minutes ago, who did nothing when doing just about anything other than nothing was absolutely what was required. While we're on this subject, pay attention to the friendly Halland, who's about to enter stage right. You can already see his shots. While that Halland is making his entrance, I want you to pay very close attention to this. This shows us that Omphalos' Petropavlovsk is detected by Hydro, and also shows the number of ships targeting him. See if you can spot the moment where the Halland, all guns blazing, suddenly became the singular focus attention of all 4 of those enemy ships. On the one hand, I can understand the Halland's temptation to get those torpedoes away, because there is a Yamato and an Ohio dug in right on the corner of the island over there, but once he'd gotten the torpedoes away, did he really think, spotted like this, he was going to win a gunfight with a Yamato, an Ohio, a Stalingrad and a Hindenburg? To be fair, he did do, at least 9,000 damage to the Ohio. So it wasn't a complete waste of a tier 10 destroyer. Not quite. So, of the 4 surviving enemy ships around the corner to the south there, we have the Yamato, we have a Hindenburg, and we have a Stalingrad. Now, they've hydroed and they've radared, so by now they have to know that Omphalos is alone in here. They've taken care of the Thunderer. The other Petropavlovsk and the Hindenburg to the north are keeping their distance. You have to ask yourself the question, at what point are these guys going to take their brave pills, put on their man pants, and come and deal with the single cruiser lurking inside the cap circle here at Alpha? And it's around about now, as the Stalingrad's radar comes off cooldown again, so they know exactly where Omphalos is. More importantly, they know exactly that he's completely alone. And it's now, when Omphalos' team is outnumbered 9 ships to 6, that the Yamato puts on his man pants and comes out to have a go. But what he's failed to take into account is his notoriously vulnerable citadel and the ridiculously high penetration high velocity 220mm guns on the Petropavlovsk. Coming around the corner broadside on like that didn't exactly help much. Omphalos, angling away, only able to fire the rear turret because of that, takes a fairly significant chunk of damage in return from the Yamato, but the Yamato continuing to sail out broadside on allows Omphalos to fire the front two 220mm gun turrets. And frankly, I think he was robbed in not getting the kill on the Yamato. Guns reloaded, victim number 2, broadsiding Stalingrad. He launches AP at him. The Stalingrad launches extremely mediocre Russian high explosive back at him. Stalingrad goes undetected. Radar. Yep, there's the Stalingrad just in time to eat a citadel. But it looks like the Stalingrad is actually going to get into cover behind the island. Yep, those flat firing arcs do have a bit of a downside in that you cannot lob shots over islands the way that particular light cruisers like the Americans and the British can. Arguably, you could say that was a waste of a radar since he wasn't able to take any shots as a result of using it, but it did light up the Hindenburg for a couple of seconds, allowing the rest of his teammates to get some shots at him that they wouldn't otherwise have been able to. And I'm talking about the Petropavlovsk and the friendly Hindenburg up to the north. Unfortunately, Omphalos's team keeps hemorrhaging ships. They just lost to Grosser Kerr first. There's now 5 of them against 8 enemies. So come on, Hindenburg, ball's in your court. What are you going to do? You're going to sit there in open water getting shot at by the Petropavlovsk and Hindenburg to the north? Or are you going to come in here with most of your health intact and take the fight to a half-health Petropavlovsk? You know exactly where he is. You've got him hydroed. You are both tier 10 cruisers. And you have torpedoes. And you are already well inside torpedo range. Hindenburg has taken his brave pills. He's going for it. To be fair, he's not exactly flat broadside coming around the corner, but the improved penetration angles on these 220mm shells take no prisoners. The Hindenburg must have gotten torpedoes away from the starboard side. He's swinging around to get the torpedoes away from the port side. Oh, Omphalos could be in a lot of trouble here, but he's almost certainly going to kill the Hindenburg. Might take a couple of salvos, however, because that turtleback armour arrangement that the Hindenburg is blessed with makes it functionally immune to citadels from cruiser caliber guns at this kind of range. And there are torpedoes in the water, but the Hindenburg has gone down. Hang on a minute. That's only one set of torpedoes. Well, it's not one set of torpedoes. The Hindenburg has double torpedo launchers on each side. That's the 2 sets of torpedoes from the port side. What happened to the Hindenburg's starboard torpedo launchers? You know, when it came around the corner in the first place. Because when he came around that corner, he ate a butt ton of damage in order to clear the firing arcs for those torpedoes. And then he didn't fire those torpedoes, which, I don't know, maybe in all the excitement if he got, he had them. Oh, well, I don't know, you come up with an explanation. Well, despite the kill on the Hindenburg, they've just lost another ship. The Minotaur's been sunk, and it looks like the Ohio up there is probably going to be next. He's still getting shot at by that pesky Stalingrad. Although the Thunderer that was approaching from the south has now changed direction, and he's still approaching from the south, but from the eastern rather than the western side of the island. That Ohio really needs to stop shooting. Like the Thunderer earlier really needed to stop shooting and go undetected, or he is not going to survive this. And Omphalos is going to be down to 2 surviving teammates. Me and my big mouth. It's like I can see things happening before they happen. I must be some sort of wizard. Surprisingly, Omphalos's team are still ahead on points, although that situation is unlikely to remain so for much longer. This is the only cap circle that his team still hold on to, and there are just 3 of them left against 6 enemies. Meanwhile, the other Petropavlovsk from the north is now nosing his way down south, presumably in pursuit of the Stalingrad, and demanding that somebody spots for him. Hell no, you're the curious one. Oh, Omphalos has just been raided on. Well, that tells us one thing. The enemy Des Moines is within at least 10 kilometres. Omphalos's own radar will be off cooldown in 20 seconds. Bear in mind, Omphalos is radared here, so everybody on the enemy team knows exactly where he is. So what happens next? I have no good explanation for. you remember that Thunderer? Pay attention just ahead. You're going to see some shots. There it is. That's close. That's really close. He's firing. Look at how close he is. He's firing at the other Petropavlovsk. Comes around the corner, broadside on in front of Omphalos. How could you not know he was here? He's just eaten all of the citadels. And he's on fire from the secondaries. But here comes the Venezia. And the Venezia has torpedoes. He is definitely the bigger threat. And he's also coming around the corner, broadside on. Did he get the torpedoes away? Oh, I hear the torpedo warning. He did. Well, they're either going to kill him or they're not. He needs to keep shooting. Oh, he's only going to take one. It's caused a flood, though, and the damage control is on cooldown, and he's on fire from the Thunderer's secondaries. The only thing that saves the Thunderer here is the wreck of the Venezia that's stopping some of the shells, but he keeps reversing out behind the sinking wreck of the Venezia, and he's not going to survive that one. Omphalos is on fire. No, the fire's gone out. He's still flooding, however. He's trying to counteract the damage with a heal, and the Des Moines is right there. Understandably, not keen to commit the same error that the Thunderer and the Venezia just did. He's quite happy to just exchange fire with the other surviving Petropavlovsk, who's exchanging fire in return with him and ducking into the shelter provided by this cap circle. Interestingly, take a look at chat. Somebody's demanding that everybody reports Omphalos for hacking. Camping and hacking. Who is that? Commander Harry. That's the Thunderer. You broadsided a Petropavlovsk at a range of 2 kilometers and you ate multiple citadels. Explain to me, in what world is that hacking? That's the ultimate compliment, isn't it, really? When you outplay somebody so comprehensively that they have no idea how you did it, and they assume that you have to be hacking. Although it's kind of worrying that a player in a tier 10 battleship would die under those circumstances and still not understand what it was that he... Oh wait, it's a Thunderer. It's a coal ship. You buy it for coal in the armory. Yeah. Yeah, that explains a lot. Oh, Shimakaze spotted. Possibly popped the radar just a little bit too soon. Now would have been ideal, because he gets one salvo away, and he had the time to prepare the high explosive. But then the Shimakaze goes undetected and pops his smoke screen. Now, if the other Petropavlovsk survives that, and he did, now would be a fantastic time to pop your radar. Or at the very least, your hydro. Yes? No? Come on, there's a Shimakaze and a smoke screen right there. He's shooting. Firing blind. Missed him. Come on. Radar. You're still alive. Use your radar. Use your hydro. Use anything. Omphalos has no heals left. He has no hydro left. He has no radar left. His damage control is on cooldown. The next fire is going to kill him. And of course, the reason the other Petropavlovsk was not using any of his consumables to spot the Shimakaze was because the Shimakaze wasn't his problem, and he didn't need to use any of his consumables to continue shooting at and, to his credit, sinking the Grosser Kurfürst on the enemy team. And the loss of that tier 10 battleship pushed the team over 1,000 points and ended the match there and then, before Omphalos could be embarrassed by the indignity of being killed in a gunfight by a Shimakaze. And that, folks, is it for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and as always, take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.